Okay, thank you everyone for doing those quick introductions. It looks like we have folks from all across the state of Colorado, and thank you for taking the time for being here. And it looks like we've got elementary and middle and high pretty much running the gamut from all across, and higher ed also. So students on there from higher ed, graduate students, etc. So thank you for being here today. As we dive into our first kind of roundtable discussion, we want to take some time to talk about quality remote health and physical education and best practices. And I'm going to just open this up to, as we move into this next school year, I know that there's a lot of uncertainty as to what it looks like, and schools are quickly coming out with plans. And we know that the year will change in terms of what learning looks like. And I know many districts are starting back with face-to-face, but there's a chance that we may be going back to remote. There's a chance that we may continue face-to-face if things move in the right direction. But I want to throw out there, how do health and physical education best practice translate into remote learning? So we'll start with that remote learning. And so that's the first question. So if we think about best practices and with remote learning for physical education, how do you see that happening? And I'll open that up to any other to thoughts or ideas at this point. So please go ahead and you can unmute yourself, or you can put some questions in or responses in the chat.
Can you restate the question, Jamie? Sorry.
Sure. So how do you, if we talk about, we'll just talk about remote learning to start with. So how do you see physical education best practices being translated into a remote learning setting? And I know Shannon has worked on, we'll be creating a document. Shannon Milliken, who's also at CDU, is on the call. She's last week was working on a document that we will get released. And if she would like to kind of share what that looks like, that would be great too.
Yeah, so Brian Hull put in the chat, Brian Hull, National Physical Education High School Teacher of the Year, is on the call. Congratulations, Brian. And he put in the chat, assessment, practice opportunities, and routines. I'm not sure if Brian wants to jump in and tell us more about that, but definitely I think all three of those things are definite possibilities in remote learning.
Yeah. Brian, can you share what some of those might look like for you?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me on. This is Brian Hull from Denver. So first of all, I mean, I know this is new to all of us, but I do think there needs to be some type of assessment still going on, and I'm still in the process of trying to figure it out for myself and my students. But obviously, remotely, we're not going to be able to see our students practicing their skills per se like we do in person. So I'm planning on having a weekly routine to where each lesson plan that I post will have some type of written work or some type of health project for the students to complete. And then the second portion of the lesson will be some links to some unique physical activity for them to choose from. And then the assessment piece I'm thinking about is some type of self-reflection or some type of objective reflection where the students are taking the data they came up from activity and kind of reflecting on how they felt before or during or after. And then in terms of activity-wise, maybe they can reflect on what they can do better the next day for the physical activity portion or whatnot. But I'm still thinking it's got to be standards-based, and I'm thinking national standards 3, 4, and 5 are going to be what's most important for me and my students.
Great, thanks.
I think for me, my name is Bree Snyder. I teach at Milliken Middle School. I primarily teach 6th grade. And so I have incoming 5th graders from 5th grade coming into 6th grade, being brand new to middle school. So I think for me, the biggest thing that I want to try and do is still build those relationships. As of right now, my school district is going back to in-person learning with the parents having an option of going online. Still not sure what that looks like, if I'm going to be teaching the online kids or if they're going to have a separate teacher teaching online. So we're still kind of working that out. But from the get-go, I think building those relationships online is going to be tough, but I think it's going to be important because that's what we've kind of missed out on, is the relationship piece with the whole pandemic and quarantining and all that stuff. So being able to build it not only with myself and my kids, but also with the students themselves by doing some sort of like weekly just fun question about physical activity, and kids can kind of comment on that, giving suggestions on what's worked for them in their household, and maybe kind of building off of that with each other is going to be really big for me from the start.
Yeah, and I think one of the differences this year is that, as we last semester, the transition was pretty abrupt in a lot of ways, but we certainly knew students going into that because we've had them for the entire year, whereas this year you may potentially have brand new students. So I think there's that added challenge of building relationships with students who you may not know, particularly if they're transitioning from a lower grade into another school. So I think that is certainly a challenge. But I will say that, I think that as the physical education teacher, the opportunities there, well, let me back up. It's it's going to be very, very important for schools to be doing this broadly, but I also think it's going to be important for physical education to certainly be building those relationships, because in physical education, we have different relationships than, say, classroom teachers would have with students, just in terms of the content and the interest areas. So I think it's going to be really important there also.
Yeah, one question, Jamie, that came up from the signups as people were registering was particularly with remote learning and accountability. And I know we're going to talk about accountability a little bit later, but specifically tied to remote learning, I think that's a huge question. And I think for a lot of us, when we made that pivot to online learning in March, there was potentially this idea of maybe not holding students as accountable just because of what was happening in the world at the time. But we can't really continue to have that same, level of lack of accountability, I guess, in some ways. But then the equity piece comes up as well, right? Of how do we hold students accountable when they might be taking care of little brother or sister or doing other things depending on what's, again, happening in the world. And so I'm not sure if folks have thoughts around accountability and making sure that we are having rigorous experiences for our students while still in the remote environment. If anyone wants to jump in on that.
I'll start. I'm Angie Cooper. I am also from Milliken Middle School. I teach with Bree. When we went to remote learning, our first few weeks, we had, like Brian talked about, having routines, and we had, I can't remember, but it was like mental health Monday, we had workout Tuesday, skill work Wednesday. So we had like different things every day. And with skill work, we gave them videos, and then they had a game that went along with their skills. But when we didn't have that accountability piece, kids weren't doing anything. So we had to mix up what we were doing. And I think probably the best unit that we did, or the best thing that we did, was we did create a game unit where they had to create their own game and video it and show it. And that was probably where we got, I would think, and at least for me, I don't know about Bree, but where I got the most participation. But again, I don't know. I just don't know. The assessment piece is going to look so different remotely, or even in person. It's going to look different with the stipulations that we have in place.
Great, thank you. Hey, Deanna, do you want to share some of your thoughts? You had an idea around assessment for secondary level, a gameplay assessment instrument. You want to share your thinking around that you have in the chat?
Yeah, sure. Are you guys able to hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So gameplay assessment instrument was something that I was introduced to back during my undergrad time at UNC. Go Bears. And it was, kind of, especially if you're around that team sports type of mindset, you could still do the team sports even though you're remote, right? So we took it as, and I've presented on it a couple times this summer, but taking it and like watching a video clip of a game, and then they're picking out that skill execution. Was that appropriate? Did they use correct form? And then also those national health skills thrown in there as well, the decision making, right? Was that an appropriate decision? Did they pass to an open teammate? Did they move without the ball? So you're implementing health skills into your physical education. And then they had that reflection piece afterwards, right? Adding on to that, like, okay, so what could they have done better to make an appropriate decision? So now you've got adding in that cognitive domain as well.
Hey everyone, this is Shannon Milliken. Jamie, did you want me to touch on the document that's going to be coming out soon?
Yeah, I think that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, so CDE, the Standards and Instructional Support Unit, will be coming out with some high impact strategies and some considerations for diverse learning environments. So really looking at, the in-person learning with physical distancing, distance learning, and then, a hybrid or a combination of the three, or of the two, I'm sorry. And so this document has several different components to it. So two of them is something that you're probably familiar with, which is going to be the best teaching practice. So what is that appropriate practice in physical education? What is the inappropriate practice? So what do we not want to see? And then the appropriate practice of what do we want to see, right? And then you're going to see some examples as to what that potentially looks like in person. And then the additions that we've created are some considerations for those diverse learning situations. So in the grid, you'll actually see a lot of them they're either examples or they're questions for you to change your train of thought to potentially thinking, okay, how can I think outside of the box? How can I have a more equitable lens when I'm trying to meet best practices around physical education? And so those are all coded with either physical distancing, distance learning, or a hybrid situation. And then the last thing that's going to be in this document are going to be your instructional strategies. So that's really looking at, I know kind of for us, we kind of refer to instructional strategies as kind of the different instructional models, right? So we have like direct instruction, we have inquiry-based teaching, we have peer teaching or cooperative learning. There's the sport ed model, and Deanne touched a little bit on, teaching games for understanding. So there's a lot of different instructional strategies that we would see in a physical education environment, and then kind of recommended what instructional strategies would be most appropriate for those appropriate practices and best practices. I would encourage us I saw that Deanne had mentioned in the chat to think about health skills. I think this is a really great opportunity for us as PE teachers to, we say that we contribute to the whole child, and we're absolutely right. I think that this is a great opportunity for us as PE teachers to be able to take a look at education in a more comprehensive look. So yes, we're going to be teaching skills. Yes, we're teaching strategies and tactics, but how are we incorporating health skills? How are we incorporating social emotional learning? How are we incorporating some of these like bigger educational pieces like equity, right, and inclusion? And we have a very, I think, good understanding of what those components look like in our environment, but we are going to be challenged being in a remote setting to not be in our comfort zone, and we're not going to be in our environment. So what does that look like, right? And I think this is a really great opportunity for us to challenge ourselves as educators to think more in an equitable lens of how do we reach all of our students through instruction, and also just through that emotional and social support.
Shannon, someone asked when the document would be available.
Jamie?
So this document will be out for all content areas. So at this point, it's being finalized. So all content areas have put their sections together. And they look similar in terms of the formatting, but all of the obviously science and health and physical education look a little bit different in terms of what the strategies are. So they've all been submitted and we're just finalizing those. They will be one full document where you can download all of those strategies for all content areas, but then there will also be specific content area documents that you can download. I'm guessing within the next week or so, we should have those finalized and out. We're kind of in the final formatting and approval phase right now. So I'm guessing probably within a week or so.
One thing that, and I know there isn't as many higher ed folks, but I do know there are some university students on the call right now. One thing we're concerned about from the university standpoint is how to have our students get practicum hours and field experiences in the fall. Luckily at UNC, we don't have any one student teaching in the fall, but we do have secondary methods and instructional strategies class. And so any of you who are going back in person and want to put a camera in your classroom or something for us, that would be great. But that is a piece too. And I'm wondering if anyone has heard anything from their schools or districts around having practicum students or student teachers in the school, and whether or not that's being considered.
So this is Ben, and we're out in Falcon. We actually have some student teachers and practical students who are coming in to do some SPED stuff. They've been signed up and approved and everything. As it comes for other contents, not sure, but we do have student teachers who are coming in.
This is Sarah Coleman. I'm with APS, and I just got off a call that principals were doing with our superintendent, talking about what a cohort looks like, who can be in contact with that cohort in our district. And because I work with the nursing students from CU, they come in and do a lot of health skills teaching for us. I believe what we are going to go to is a model to prepare to push in virtually with these lessons, which isn't the ideal, but I think it does tap into those 21st century learning skills for everyone. And analyzing where you're getting your information is going to be seriously important during this time. So that's what I'm hearing. We even heard that about our ESS providers or special ed providers, that there's going to be very, very limited contact. And just defining what a cohort is right now is super, super conflicting for us.
Hi, everyone. This is Shannon Milliken again. I just wanted to touch really quickly on what Sarah had said. So I'm going to push you towards the standards document with the 21st century skills and the essential skills and those inquiry questions as far as giving meaning towards your content, right? So if we aren't able to do as much direct instruction or even teaching around like standard 1 and around the actual movement concepts and competencies, start looking at that application piece, right? So how is what we're teaching being applied in real life scenarios, right? And those essential skills, again, those are universal languages for all content areas. So you're able to collaborate, or you're able to say, hey, this is common terminology that's being used across all of your content areas. So again, I'm gonna push you towards looking and diving into the standards. I know that's very overwhelming right now, and standards are, I don't want to go through the document, but it's a great resource for you to pick and pull questions and content that's already there about providing application to what you're currently teaching.
Okay, great. Any other thoughts? And I think that if there aren't any other ideas, I think maybe we should move on to maybe not the next section, but maybe thinking about what does this look like if we are in a face-to-face setting? Considering the guidelines around social distancing, students wearing masks, cleaning, disinfecting, which we know there will be some level of that, and as Sarah mentions, cohorting will probably be happening. So as we think about those COVID-19 guidelines that are now being rolled out for the physical education setting, or for the school setting, I should say, what implications do those have around best practices? So if we could just have a conversation around that, and then we'll go from there. And I posted that question in the chat.
I guess I'll jump in here. My name is Justin. I'm at the Pinnacle Charter School in Federal Heights. I know that I've been kind of doing football stuff with the football team I coach all summer, and I've kind of thought that I might do something similar if we're in person. Our school's talking about doing two days in person, 3 days online. I kind of figured I would kind of separate them all out with either poly spots or numbers on the field or whatever, keep them all separated and do a real fitness focus. Obviously, we'll be able to stay socially distant that way. It'll take away a lot of the gameplay, but I've thought about things like hacky sack and, doing some different things where they have their own individual stuff like that. But for me, honestly, I think I'm really going to focus in on, especially because we've kind of been out of our normal physical education for, by the time they get started, almost 6 months. I've really been focusing on the fitness part of it, and almost just kind of going through workouts with them, especially since I only get them 2 days a week, it looks like, to start out. And then my 3 days online will be more health focused, because I just teaching PE last semester online when we did go all online was a little bit more challenging. I think we could get more out of if we do more of an online health stuff. And then if I do get them in person, or if we do get them in person, that's when we can focus a little bit more on the PE and the fitness stuff. So that's kind of my thing. Like I said, it's worked well with our athletes this summer, keeping them separated. Obviously, I would change it up and not do I'm not training athletes, and I'm just training people that are, to be healthy and to be physically fit and that kind of stuff. So I would change up the activities, but I really like the idea and keeping them separate, and they have all their stuff in their own spot. So there's never any commingling. And then, to be honest with you, I like it better for me as a teacher, and staying outside and staying spread out, in terms of, worrying about my own health as well. So that's kind of my focus. And then I'm going to stay outside as much as I possibly can, unless it's absolutely necessary that we are not able to go outside. That's what my focus is going to be fitness wise.
Great, thanks. Anyone else like to share their thoughts?
I think, so Brian Hull had put, things like lifetime or individual dual activities, so badminton, pickleball, cycling or biking if you have availability for that equipment, wellness, walking, I think is actually an undervalued activity in physical education, given its focus and how the majority of Americans actually do walking. I really appreciate Justin's input and things. I also fear that we might just turn into a bunch of fitness trainers if we focus only on fitness. And I think that was a huge push in March and April and May because it was the simplest thing to do. And so I think that those are great ideas, and I agree that those are things that we can do safely. Our neighbors to the north of us in Canada, their document, Return to School Guidelines, I'll post the PDF. It's actually really good, and I'm a little bit biased because I'm Canadian, but their document lists some sample activities for different grade levels based off of social distancing guidelines. So things like, follow the leader game for K through 3, follow the leader games, movement concepts, chalk obstacle courses, dance, outdoor survival skills, things like that. And then moving into the secondary kind of levels, things like orienteering, geocaching, survival skills, leadership development, outdoor education, juggling, track and field, things like that. So there are a lot of options. And just like we mentioned, I think in the last roundtable, for a lot of us, what this is going to mean is going to be thinking outside of our, boxes of what we've always done and doing things a little bit differently. And while that can be really uncomfortable, it can also be really exciting. So I'll post a link to the Canadian reentry guidelines as well. And so folks can have another resource to look at. I also think that document does a little bit better job than the Shape America document at talking a little bit more through equity and trauma-based responses and things. So I'll post that for folks to look at as well.
Hey, Deborah, do you mind sharing your thoughts about the string backpack idea with equipment?
Sure. I'm kind of thinking this one is going to help online. Fitness is so much easier to do online versus the skills because I didn't know if the kids had the equipment. But this would also help with cleaning equipment too. So I'm working with my principal right now, getting each kid their own backpack, and then they would be numbered alphabetically. So like 1 would be Arbery, 2 would be Blackberry, etc. And then each of their equipment would be numbered with their number. So if we were working with tennis balls per se, and they would have to use their foot to roll it to find their number versus picking up and touching somebody else's equipment. The other thing that I was thinking with this is that if we did go online, they could take their backpack home and they would have the equipment, so I could still be teaching skills. So that's kind of my thought on that.
Great, thank you. So I think we've talked a little bit about this, and I think that what we've talked about around best practices, and that many folks have said we really want to be focusing on kind of fitness and physical activity, and so the next section that I think would be probably valuable to talk about here is that if we really want to focus beyond, well, let me back up. We need to have a balance between kind of the physical education side of it and the physical activity side of it. And many of you said that you're going to be focusing on the fitness side. What are some ways that we consider to balance those two out and really get more of the physical education skills built into the remote learning and into the online or remote learning or face-to-face, so that both of those. But as we shift into that more balanced approach to addressing all of the physical education standards, what are some strategies that you might do to move away from just focusing on the physical activity side of it, to really building in some of those skills practice pieces that we've talked a little bit about.
Yeah, Jamie, I think, sorry, this is Jamie jumping in. Both the Shape America guidelines and the PHE Canada guidelines talk about the notion of a flipped classroom. And I'm sure most of you have heard of this idea of a flipped classroom before, where the kind of knowledge and concepts are taught or in some type of remote fashion, and then the implementation of the skills occurs in person. And I think particularly, in going back to Justin's point, if he's seeing his students 2 days a week and then not for 3 days a week, thinking of something like having them develop a personal fitness plan or a personal wellness plan, and really, like, I feel like we have the time, this sounds crazy, but we have the time in some ways when we don't have them with us all the time, our students with us all the time, to focus on those things like teaching appropriate goal setting and things like that, that we might not feel like we have the time for when we are in person with our students all the time, because we feel like when they're with us that they should be being active and moving. And so I think that there are some real opportunities for us to think, again, like I said earlier, outside of the box, and focusing on some of those cognitive and affective skills that we don't always put as much effort into when we are just seeing students once every 6 days or whatever it is in your schedules in person. And so I do think that there are some opportunities there for us to take, advantage of some of the time that we can, give students maybe some of that more traditional type homework and things like that to amplify what they are doing in the classroom.
I guess for me at the middle school, I'm struggling with the planning piece, so it's nice to hear everyone's ideas because, like I said, right now my school district is planning on going to in-person learning 5 days a week, and the parents have the option of doing online learning, but with the survey that was sent out, it looks like 75% of our population wants to return to in-person. So that's potentially 150 kids, 100 to 150 kids I'm going to see every day. And we haven't had a full plan of what that looks like as far as cohorts or not cohorts, or, if we're inside or outside. We have 3 PE teachers at our school, which is amazing, but 2 gyms. And so it's been nice to actually hear ideas, but I'm still kind of, I think, wrapping my head around the idea of what the social distancing is going to look like, what skills are going to be taught, project ideas, and what that will look like for our school.
Has anyone thought about that, or any ideas to help Brianna and with her question?
Hey, Jamie and folks, it's Murray Wallace here. Can you hear me? Oh, hard lines. Sometimes you talked about the flipped learning stuff, Jamie, and I don't know if this is really going to help you that much, Bree, but sometimes I feel like the flipped learning should be almost a flipped learning in PE and stuff. And maybe we in our class, particularly with the COVID-19 situation, I mean, my school district, we're going, I think, every other day type of thing, but it's like setting them up to then do their physical activity outside of our class. So then the day that they're not in class, they're doing something, right? And then they're, maybe reflecting on that or discussing that or setting goals and all that type of stuff when they're in my class, and I can actually help them with that. It's kind of how I was thinking about going about it. I do agree. I think it's a great opportunity for us to get creative and actually start thinking outside the box, because I feel like very often we project what we want to do onto our students to a certain extent, rather than letting them, really explore the opportunity for them to be physically active, because our goal should really be not what they're doing in our class, but what they're doing outside of our class, because they spend a lot more time outside of our class than they do inside of our class. I know that doesn't really help you much, Bree, but I mean, it just also, thinking about things like, in class, they're all going to be wearing masks and all that type of stuff. And there's some data about the, uncomfortable wearing masks when they're exercising and all that type of thing, So just my tuppence worth, as they would say.
Thanks, Maria. I appreciate that. I've had so many nightmares and dreams about this whole situation. So I just we all want our kids to have these really authentic learning situations. And as PE teachers, we know that we're constantly advocating for our profession, whether there's a pandemic happening or not. So now I feel like we're really, really advocating for why we need to be in the classroom, why our kids need to have us. I was just texting my colleague Angie about a dream I had. It just came to me one night. Our city doesn't have any bike paths or bike routes, and so I think it might be a cool idea just to kind of have the kids create that a bike route or a bike map for Johnstown and Milliken and maybe present it to the city, because that way they're involved in this really authentic learning situation that applies directly to them and their family and the community. How that's going to happen, I have no idea, and that's more of an 8th grade thing. I don't think my 6th graders are mature enough yet to kind of wrap their head around that. But just kind of thinking about those types of projects where kids are actually invested and involved and not just checking boxes to get it done is really what I am trying to wrap my head around, how we can do that for our kids.
Hey y'all, Deanne Romero here again, and Bree, that's exactly it, right? We want to create these authentic opportunities for our students, and these times are completely new for all of us, so we're all in this boat together. So first and foremost, all of you that are on here, know that you're not alone, right? That's why we're doing these roundtables, is so that you have support, because we're all in this ship together, and we will figure out a way to navigate through these rocky waters. But I think coming back, and I said it earlier too, I think it was Justin when he was talking about, it's not about making better athletes, but it is about that physical literacy piece, right? Turning kids on to lifelong movement, understanding the benefits and the enjoyment to do so. So creating those authentic activities and opportunities for them to just kind of unleash more ideas and activities into their world. So the bike path that Bree created up in her nightmares, as Jamie had put it, is brilliant, right? Because now you're putting them in the driver's seat. And I think this opportunity allows for that, right? Using that flipped classroom, making it more student-centered, making it more relevant to the individual child, not necessarily whole class, but now it comes down to that whole child. Tying everything back into the standards, what you do. We know that we want our kids to get MVPA every day that they're with us, but we're going to have to do that in a little bit more creative ways, right? So Maria said, I'm going to create opportunities for them to be physically active at home, now with their families, right? I've seen more people outside in my neighborhood during this since March than I ever have before. And so giving them those opportunities to do that, then that cognitive attachment inside the classroom because of, equipment, social distancing, parameters, I can work with them and focus on the skills of goal setting and decision making, that we can reinforce those.
I agree. This is Sarah. We keep talking about how we need students to be problem solvers. And I think that that's a great idea, Bree, that you gave. I would try it with 6th graders. I would even try it with 4th graders to see, how can they get to school using their bike? Or what's a different walking path that they can utilize. I think one of the things that we saw from family engagement comments was, I need ideas of things to do with my family right now because we're quarantined. Now, obviously, we're not quarantined right now, but there are different things that we can suggest that would help families move together and help families engage in healthy practices together. So I think it's a wonderful idea, and it kind of helped me think about some things that I can brainstorm with Kenny for our school district. And every district's going to be different, but one thing that has come up is transportation to schools. What's that going to look like for busing when we can only have one kid per seat? We got to separate them, we got to clean them. Well, there's an opportunity there to do walking school routes. Pardon my dog barking at the world out there. So I think that that's a really good opportunity for us to look at and influence in any way that we can. So thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, and I think that that's a great, and I posted in the chat, we've talked a little bit about the health skills, which are part of the standards, but I think that particular example, if you look at the health standards, which I'll post also, there's things about safety and transportation and safe walking, like that's all part of the health education standards. So that project can really blend across health education in terms of some of those safety components, but also can be really a great way to get students to advocate for their school and for their community. So those are advocacy, communication skills are all health skills, and I posted some models in the chat there also. So I think that one really authentic project is a great way to combine health and physical education in a nice way.
We haven't delved into, and obviously, you guys, I'm going to apologize because I'm slanted to the health side, but we haven't delved into nutrition practices as well. And I think that even Bree, thinking about your idea brings up some different practices we could explore with kids for nutrition. How are they bringing a healthy meal to school? How are they cooking with their family, preparing foods with their family? We can tap into those things because we know family life is changing drastically, even still now, as people are able to return to work in some aspects. So one thing that has come up too, and I want to be conscious and step back here, is eating in the classroom versus eating in a large environment. And what kind of opportunity do we have to talk about choices that they're making when they're in a smaller cohort, and bringing attention to that too. So just some food for thought, and now I'll step back.
Yeah, Sarah, like you mentioned, like the nutrition stuff is also important too, in looking at how we can educate our students and our community on those healthy choices while, maintaining our physical distance and doing all of the right best practice things. The other thing that comes into play, and I'm sure some of you are a part of your schools or districts' wellness committees, I know I am, is looking at how we can incorporate those wellness ideas through PE and health as for a whole school model, and then into the community while maintaining whatever precautions that we're taking. So I'm trying to wrap my brain around that as well, how we can do like a wellness week where we're recognizing kids for their healthy choices without being in a cafeteria, or what they're bringing to school and how we can influence those choices as well.
So when it comes to stuff like that, during the quarantine time with my elementary kids, a lot of the stuff that they did at home focused on the health and the nutrition and the take a picture of my plate and do this stuff. And that was the way to engage the students. And so shifting that same model over to the classrooms allows me that same ability where the kids already know the different apps we use. They know how to post. They know the technology tools they need. So then incorporating it that way allowed me still to increase the amount of health standards I could touch on without necessarily taking more time. And so that's something I'm going to continue because I have a whole school worth of data of them taking pictures of their lunches at home. And now what does that look like? And which classroom has, you know, the best looking lunches, or which classroom has the most variety in their lunches? You know, we talk about eating the rainbow and stuff, not the Skittles commercial, but, you know, and, you know, so that's something that was a way that I used the health standards to supplement when I couldn't get them, or if I wasn't sure because they were traveling or whatever, that I could guarantee they were getting that physical activity, like Murray mentioned earlier.
Ben, what apps have you used has come up in the questions?
That's a long answer. So Padlet is one that's a big one. Flipgrid, Google Forms, using Google Sites. I mean, it's whatever I used with the kids. So what you do is you know, whatever you use the same thing, or use what the classroom teachers use, because that's one less thing you're going to have to learn, or one less thing you're going to have to try to teach. And so for those, I know I've seen some of the names from some of those that follow the stuff I post and stuff. You've seen some of the videos and whatever. But yeah, I mean, Padlet's a good one, just straight up because it can be done from a single device. Multiple people posting. It doesn't require a login, and everything. So, but that's a whole nother conversation.
Just to add on to that, I've been working at a summer camp for kids. I'm a inline hockey coordinator, and I use an app called Goose Chase that I've seen on Twitter. I think some of you have probably heard of it, to do some sort of like scavenger hunt with the kids. And I saw somebody post something on Twitter about using it in the fall, whether you're doing remote or in-person learning. And so you can put out, the kids join with a game code. So you can have a game code for your first period or second period or whatever, however you split up your kids. And assign, like, they're called missions, but it's really just a task. So you can say, okay, today is Monday, you need to take a picture of a healthy meal that you're eating, and it automatically posts to this feed. So all the kids in that group or in the game can see it. Almost thinking, and it, you know, how I can use that with my kids is having them do those missions, healthy meals, do some sort of physical activity, take a picture of whatever, and then comment on somebody else's post so that you can have the kids engaging with each other, even if you're doing that remote learning. Obviously the precautions have to go into place with like appropriate comments, be positive and kind, all those things will go into place but prior to that. But that could be a good idea to use that Goose Chase app for that remote learning as well.
Hey everyone, this is Shannon Milliken again. So I just wanted to take a quick second, and you guys have all done a really great job of thinking about like how do we meet all of our students' needs, right? And I think I just want to take a step back real quick, and I just want to applaud every single one of you for being here on this call. I think we are all in agreement that no matter how long you have been teaching, next year is probably going to be the hardest year for any teacher, right? And so I want to applaud you all for being here. And I also want to say, give yourself some grace, right? Like Bree, you saying, I'm having nightmares about this, right? Like, I think any of you who like know me personally, I would probably be saying the exact same thing if I were going back into a classroom in the fall. But if there's anything that I've learned through this, it's we are all in this together, and give yourself some grace, right? I know that we are so in the consistency of advocating for what we do is important for kids, and you know, meeting standards, but the number one important thing right now is that we are there for these kids, right? And whether it's in person or whether it's a face-to-face time, right? Sometimes when you think about, you are the consistent face that these kiddos see, right? And making that connection with these kids is going to mean a lot more to them, whether or not you're just saying, hi, how are you? Versus teaching them how to throw a ball, right? And or giving them an idea of how they're going to engage with their brother and sister, right? While they're at home. So I would just thank you for being here. I applaud everything that you're trying to do and trying to be the absolute best for your students. But at the same time, allow yourself some grace, right? And allow yourself to make imperfect mistakes, because we're all in this together, and that's what this year is going to be about. So thank you guys for all being here.
Yeah, thanks, Shannon. Oh, go ahead, Jamie.
Nope, it's all you.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo that, and also to let you all know that we did mention this in the last one, but CDE will be coming out with specific guidelines for physical education and physical activity with respect to Colorado. So the Shape America guidelines and the PHE Canada guidelines are good places to start for now as far as looking at some ideas and options for you. But that also know that work is continuing, and as with everything, there's logistical things that need to get put in place and whatnot before all of those pieces can happen. But the Shape Colorado will make sure that everybody knows as new resources come out and things like that for you to help you, and you have a community in your other colleagues in Shape Colorado. So, use social media, use Twitter, connect with each other in those ways. Bree has graciously put her email in there so everyone can email Bree about her ideas that she put. But we are, this community is here to kind of support everyone. And we do have another roundtable in 2 weeks to continue to discuss these things. And hopefully by then people will know a little bit maybe more about what things are going to look like for them specifically. But I would agree with Shannon. Self-care and taking care of yourselves is more important now than ever. And we all know how great teachers are at self-care in a regular time. So this is our time to actually really practice what we preach with respect to self-care and only doing what you can, but then still, like we said, doing what's best for kids. And so on behalf of Shape Colorado, I just want to thank everyone for being here and whatnot. So Jamie, I'm not sure if you have any closing words.
No, I think we're kind of wrapping things up here. The one piece that we did not have a chance to specifically talk about was accountability, and so that is one piece that we didn't specifically talk about. We could table that till the next roundtable. Ben has posted a URL in the chat for PD credit, so you can get that certificate of hours for credit there. So you can complete that. And I think we'll just go ahead and table the assessment or the accountability until the next roundtable, and we'll just add that to our agenda. If you have any other questions or thoughts or comments, you can go ahead and post those, and we'll track those and try to get those answered in the next roundtable that we have. So just to wrap things up, thank you so much for being here today. Some great ideas were shared. We will send the follow-up out for this with resources available there for you to refer back to. And just want to say thank you for being here and sharing wonderful ideas. And I think as we wrap things up, take care of yourself. That's the start of this, we really do need to be taking care of ourselves so we can take care of our students. So that's where I will end things, and unless Jamie or Ben have other thoughts or comments.
For everybody who's here, you guys are members in the membership portal. When you sign in, there's a tab at the top that says members resources. That's where this gets posted. We also are on 6 different podcast platforms now. So we're across everything from Google to Apple to Anchor to whatever. We're on a bunch of them. So we'll put that up later today. And you guys, again, if you want to go back and watch it or you want to go back and listen to it, it will be posted in that members portal. So you guys all have access to it. Thank you for everybody who did sign up for your membership or whatever, or renewed your membership. That's awesome. We had about 15 new members sign up or renew. So you guys are doing awesome. And the next one will carry on. And yeah, good job.
Do you guys have the date for the next roundtable?
August 6th.
Thank you.
August 3rd, sorry.
3rd. Yeah.
August 3rd. It was a Monday, yeah. I have kids on the 6th, so we'll see what happens.
August 3rd, and there will be another email coming out from Shape Colorado to sign up for that one as well. So Great. Thank you, Jamie.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all for being here. Make sure you get your PD credit. Ben has posted a tiny URL, so make sure you get that before you sign out, and we'll see you next time.